Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Costa Mavrilakis, the founder and CEO of MedTech Ventures, the delivery partner for today's Market Access for MedTech course. The course is hosted by the University of Southampton Institute for Life Sciences and the National Institute for Health Research Surgical MedTech Cooperative. This is the second session of our six-part course named Identifying the Right Funding. We're going to have a number of speakers joining us today. To see a list of the speakers, please go to the reception area on Hopin on the left-hand side of your screen. And we'll shortly hear from those speakers on the main stage, followed by a live question and answer session, which I'll be joining. You'll access this from the sessions area on the left of your screen. There'll also be an opportunity to connect with some of the speakers and MedTech SMEs in the expo area, where you can connect with them over video. You can request to connect with them using the Super Connect for Me button that we will facilitate introductions for, and you can also view their material. When you're on the stage or in the sessions area, you'll see three tabs. You'll see polls. Please do participate and answer our polls. You'll see chat on the left-hand side, and you'll also see Q&A. For any questions that you have for our speakers, please post these in the live Q&A, and the chair will make sure that as many questions are answered as possible. If you need any support on the day as a speaker, please go to the green room where Mansata will be available to support you. And as an attendee, if you need any support, whether it's technical support or otherwise, please go to the exhibition booth and to the MedTech Ventures booth in particular, where I'll be available to support you. We really hope you enjoyed today's session. And I'm now going to hand over to our co-host of Market Access for MedTech, Veema Punde, Program Director of the National Institute for Health Research Surgical MedTech Cooperative, who will take over from me now.
Yes,
hi, Veema, joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome to everybody, and thank you for joining us on our second installment. I would like to just go over a few bits so that people can sort of manage expectations and know what they're going to hear. So last week we did start off with identifying unmet needs, and the purpose of that and its relevance to market access is basically if you want to gain your market access, particularly for the NHS, you do have to meet the unmet needs. So it's actually quite useful to understand what the NHS sees as a valuable technology and how they define that and what evidence that they need to see the patient benefits for. And today's installment, we're continuing with that same theme, which is looking at identifying the right funding sources. And this is probably more relevant for the companies that still require funding. So if you've got a complete product and you're completely finished and you're just looking to get it in there, then no, this is probably not the right course for you. But if you're still along, further down the chain earlier on in the innovation stage, then you will find this course particularly useful. So just thought I would mention that just in case people are expecting to be told you need to fill in this form over here and you can get your product into the NHS. This is really about SMEs that want to develop something or are in the process of developing a technology, and they want to maximize the opportunities for market access further down the line. So today we've got quite an exciting array of speakers for you, covering the different funding streams for medical technology development. So this is once you've had the proof of concept, for example, you're looking for funding for proof of concept. That's basically where we are starting the funding from. So you'll hear from Innovate UK/UKRI type funding streams. You're going to hear about the NIHR funding streams for MedTech. You're going to hear from the venture funding, crowdfunding, and a whole lot of other funding that's open to SMEs. So please do get your questions going in the chat boxes and the Q&A boxes to the right of your screen. And we will try and answer them as we go along. But I will hand this over back to MedTech Ventures now, and we shall get started with the talks.
Thanks for that introduction, V, and it's great to have you here. We're now going to hand over to our chair for the session, Michael Kipping from Innovate UK, who's going to kick off with his presentation.
Hi, my name's Michael Kipping and I'm a Health Innovation Lead at Innovate UK. My interest in medical devices really started when I did my PhD in orthopedic implants at the University of Nottingham. I then went on and had a 10-year stint within the medical device industry, working for companies such as Guidant, Boston Scientific and Biotronic, where I kind of latterly ran the commercial organisation in the UK and Ireland. I then had a few years as Deputy Director at the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency within the Medical Devices Division, and have been with Innovate UK now for about 3.5 years. So I've been very privileged to see sort of the health tech and life sciences industry from a range of different angles. Innovate UK belongs to a larger organisation called UKRI, UK Research and Innovation. And along with Innovate UK, there are 7 research councils and Research England. Our chief exec is Dame Ottilie Liza, and our annual budget is in the region of £7 billion. The role of Innovate UK is kind of akin to being a research council for industry. It's not quite the right terminology, but our role is to try and drive productivity and economic growth and really build on the world-class research base that we have in the UK. So our annual budget is in the region of 1.3 billion, and we have a new chief executive, Mr. Indro Mukherjee. Now, when we're talking about life sciences and supporting life sciences, one thing to really keep in mind is that Innovate UK aren't trying to address the healthcare system per se in the UK. We're trying to support the life sciences industry. So if your target market is the NHS, that's fine. But if it's not, and you're actually targeting US or India or China or somewhere else, that's equally fine. We're here to try and help you develop innovative and potentially quite, risky kind of payoff ideas. I'll talk largely around funding, but this slide really wants to give you a sense of the broader range of activities that we're involved in at Innovate UK. So we do have support organisations like Innovate UK Edge and KTN that can help guide you. We also have the catapult centres that may be able to provide you with expertise. We run global kind of explorative missions, and also have kind of sort of programs like knowledge transfer partnerships, KTPs, that can really designed to bring sort of academic expertise into a company for a limited time frame. So lots of different things that we do, and well worth speaking to KTN in particular at this stage. So moving on to the UK and to the MedTech market. Firstly, it's a large market globally, about £333 billion, and the EU accounts for about 1/3 of that market. UK is in the region of 4% of that global market. So again, when you're developing your ideas and your products, yes, keep an eye on the UK, but you need to think more broadly about what the sort of global appetite for your product could be. In the UK, we have around 4,000 companies that employ over 120,000 people. So that's a similar sort of figure as, say, the pharma industry. So really important area for employing people in highly skilled jobs. But unlike pharma, most of the companies within the medtech sector are SMEs, and only 91 have revenues in excess of 50 million. Key thing to note is that we've got lots of changes within the regulatory environment in EU with CE mark regulatory requirements, and also within UK and Great Britain with UK CA mark. Innovation has been identified as being absolutely key to growth and prosperity by the UK government, and life sciences in particular features heavily within Queen's speech, but also the Build Back Better, our plan for growth document that the Treasury published back in March. Funding and finance. This slide is a bit simplistic, but just to give you a sense of where Innovate UK fit in. And we're really focused on that very, very early stage. So we cannot and will not compete with sort of existing investors. That's not our role. Last year, we saw record investment in UK life science companies, but this tended to be at sort of late Series A, Series B, so that sort of early green zone, and less investment, much less investment at sort of pre-seed and seed. And that's where we at Innovate UK are really focused on. Now, the state aid legislation that we work under means that it's very difficult, even if we wanted to work in the post-market space. So most of our activities are really focused on that pre-market space and supporting companies from sort of translational research right through to the point just before market itself. Some pros to government funding: it's typically non-dilutive, so we take no equity in your business. You can get up to 70% of your total project costs. Innovate UK, just the fact that you've had a grant from us can be viewed positively by investors. And really our funding is designed to support sort of risky, innovative ideas. So we're not we're not going to be funding Me Too ideas or products that are already on the market. On the con side, funding competitions can be unpredictable. There's high demand, and the success rates in the region of 5 to 10%. Timing of competitions might not suit your needs, and you'll still need to find some money from somewhere. One competition probably worth looking out for is our smart competition. So this is an open competition, any company, any sector, typically 4 competitions a year with around £25 million available each time. Total project costs can go up to about £2 million with this. We're also running investor partnerships, and we've been trialing this as an approach. So as I mentioned, there is a requirement for match funding. So the idea behind this is that you can get the funding, 70% of the funding from us, but that 30% match funding can be supported by an investor. The program that I'm responsible for is called the Biomedical Catalyst, and this first started back in 2012, was born out of the OLS strategy for life sciences, and is about supporting really innovative life science companies. We had independent evaluation by Ipsos Mori, who deemed it to be as effective, at a minimum, as effective as R&D tax credits in stimulating private R&D investment. So it's a really good program. It's been running for quite a long time and will likely continue to do so in the future. Despite its name, Biomedical Catalyst, we actually support the whole gamut of sort of subsectors across life sciences. So we support gene therapies, in vitro diagnostics, digital, software, robotics, vaccines, MedTech, literally anything and anything within the human health and life sciences space. We also support platform technologies. So for instance, if you're developing like AI within drug discovery or drug development, that would be in scope as well. This is just an example, it's not an exhaustive one. The sorts of things that you can use your money for, from Innovate UK, it could be regulatory consultancy, design and testing, you could pay for a notified body or conformity assessment, clinical investigation. So it's really open, you can use it for all sorts of things. As I mentioned earlier, this is just relates to Biomedical Catalyst, and it just gives you a sense of how competitive it is. In terms of where the money goes, probably unsurprisingly, a lot of the money historically has gone to the Golden Triangle, so Oxford, Cambridge, London. However, we have seen that really shift over the last few years, with more MedTech, health tech companies applying to us that typically are based outside of those areas. And around half of the projects we fund are within sort of the medical devices diagnostics space. Okay, key thing to note from this, just looking back over the past 3 years, in terms of investors, there are 195 within the 62 businesses that we funded over that time frame. So there's lots of investors out there. that are interested in life sciences. And when you're looking for support, financial support, yes, you'll need the money, but also look at what those investors can offer you as a business. You know, what skills, expertise, contacts they can offer you. We have a competition open at the moment, £18 million available, and we will be running some applicant briefing events for this. And the information is on our Innovation Funding Service website. One key thing to note with all Innovate You competitions is that competition close is non-negotiable. If you miss it by a second, a minute, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the reason. If you miss that deadline, that's it. Okay, so always, if you're going to apply, always put it in a day or two before if you can. So that
Hello, my name is Yelena Pelaeva and I'm the Business Development Manager for NIHR, National Institute for Health Research. Specifically, I sit in the Office for Clinical Research Infrastructure, NOCRI for short, and our team's aim is to help companies navigate the ecosystem that NIHR funds. Today, the topic will be around funding, but I will give you a broader perspective of what else we do to support SMEs on the journey to market. We are fully funded by the Department of Health and Social Care, and we spend more than half of our budget on what we call the research infrastructure, and that's people, facilities, and systems that are embedded in the NHS and universities to deliver trials. The focus of today's presentation is around the research programs where companies can be lead applicants or co-applicants, and we spend a quarter of our budget on funding, making us the largest funder of clinical trials in the UK. We cover all therapy areas and most modalities, including medical devices and NIHR's position within the innovation pathway is around evaluation, and we don't do much in the invention space. Usually we invite companies to reach out to us when they are finalizing the prototype and preclinical evaluation. And again, once we've helped generate the evidence of care pathway analysis, cost effectiveness, etc., they are moving on to AHSNs and CCGs. We are well linked with regulatory agencies and NICE and can link companies wider in the ecosystem as well, like with investor community or Department for International Trade. Companies can benefit from the offer to industry, in particular from these 6 components, where we're able to signpost companies to experts like key opinion leaders, methodologists, care pathway analysts, etc. Facilities are ring-fenced areas within hospitals where trials can take place. Trial management is delivered through Clinical Research Network, a big part of NIHR, and they can support companies with trial management, site identification, and trial delivery. Increasingly, patient samples and patient involvement is something we can support companies with, and data provisions. And the focus of today's presentation is funding. But if you want to know more about these components, please come and talk to me at the NIHR booth. When it comes to funding, we offer a variety of funding schemes where companies can be lead applicants or co-applicants alongside an NHS trust or university. And it depends on what innovation you have and what stage of development you're at and what you want to achieve. You would have seen a similar slide in the other presentations today, and I will focus on the NIHR funded streams that are here in navy blue. Research for patient benefit program funds regionally derived applied research in health services and social care, and companies can apply as co-applicants alongside universities and hospitals. I will go through a few of these funding schemes, and there are a few useful timelines and deadlines on one of the last slides. When it comes to efficacy and mechanism evaluation, it's a program we run in collaboration with Medical Research Council, and companies from across the UK can be lead applicants after they've demonstrated proof of concept of their technology. And the aim of this EMI award is to test the clinical efficacy of novel or repurposed interventions. Further down the line, the innovation pathway is the health technology assessment, where again companies can be leading applicants. And the important thing here is that once a clinical efficacy has been determined, it's within the health technology assessment program that one can test the clinical and cost effectiveness of the innovation, comparing it to the current standard of care. I forgot to mention that the EMI and HTA are uncapped. However, they need to be properly budgeted, just like the Product Development Award, which is part of the I4I funding streams. I4I standing for Invention for Innovation Program, which comes in 3 different flavors. This is for England-based lead applicants, so for Connect, an SME from England must be the lead applicant, whereas for Product Development Award and Challenge, that can be a combination of collaborators with SMEs, universities and trusts. Product Development Award is really there to bridge the gap between invention and commercialization, whereas Challenge Award is for late phase innovations that are market ready and, for example, can be CE marked already. I have put together a few dates for upcoming competitions. So Research for Patient Benefit, there is one coming up in July. For EMI, including specific theme calls on COVID and dementia, there's one in August. Health Technology Assessment, researcher-led deadline is in September, whereas theme calls in July, and there's quite a few of different ones. With I4I, for Product Development Award, that usually runs twice a year, there's a deadline just today, the next couple of days, and same for Challenge Award. But I4I Connect, which is the small pot of money, the deadline for that is 14th of September. Now, AI Award is something that NIHR runs together in collaboration with NHSX and Accelerated Access Collaborative, and it is similar in its structure to I4I Award in that there's phases based on the phase of development, and the aim of the AI Award is to assist AI technologies getting into the NHS, and the 3 specific areas that have been identified where AI technologies are welcome are improving the overall system efficiency, dashboards, etc., then improving the diagnosis and treatment, and that goes for early detection as well. And then the 3rd one is health promotion and living healthier and avoiding hospitals, basically. And so the next round of the AI Award will launch towards the end of the month, and the deadline for application is 6th of September. All of these funding schemes have their own contact and email addresses. If you want to know more, the information is on our website as well about eligibility, scope, guidance, etc. And so to summarize, our offer to industry is supporting you in getting access to funding, but also building bespoke collaborations, finding collaborators with this funding, and getting links with world-leading experts who will be the collaborators on many of these funding streams. This matchmaking service, so to say, signposting service, is free of charge, and if you'd like to know more, you can go on our MedTech Hub or join me in the virtual booth after the meeting. Thank you. With any questions, please send me an email, or the generic inbox information is there as well. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Kevin Brooks, and I have been invited to talk to you about the funding competition SBRI Healthcare, Small Business Research Initiative Healthcare. I will provide knowledge about the funder, to help you understand what makes them tick. I will also provide you with an idea of what is needed for the application and some general hints and tips to improve your chances of winning this funding. Before I do, a quick introduction. I am a jobbing bid writer. I have 30 years experience in supporting organisations to win funding. Over the last 5 years, I have been the director of my own company, Brooks Kebby Limited. I work with several organisations, including Set Squared, the global #1 business incubator, and the Wessex AHSN, NHS Office of Life Sciences and partnership-funded academic health science networks. SBRI Healthcare is particularly relevant to AHSNs, and I will come on to discuss that in a moment. So, know your funder. To know whether you can win the SBRI healthcare funding. This is important because funders are only interested in solving their own problems. Your innovation may or may not interest them, depending on how well you fit with their criteria. So understanding their MO, how they tick, is very important. As you can see from the slide, SBRI Healthcare funds disruptive and game-changing innovations to solve identified healthcare problems in the NHS and the wider health and social care system. As you can see from the image on the right, that they are also interested in your project making money and creating jobs, helping the UK economy be more productive and to grow. If your project isn't commercially focused with the potential to increase productivity and generate jobs, then they are unlikely to give your application a second glance. They are also interested in export. You need to fit with the government's global Britain strategy and have the potential to export your big idea overseas. Yes, they are interested in improving patient care, increasing NHS efficiency and driving innovation into the NHS. But if the commercial dimension is missing, then you will be out of scope for this competition. I mentioned that AHSNs are involved in these competitions, and the image shows the 15 national academic health science networks. The competition is hosted by the LGC Group, Global Leaders in Life Sciences, and I will put their involvement in context in a moment. The AHSNs working with LGC will identify a theme for each SBRI healthcare competition, which usually runs twice a year. For example, the current theme focuses on cancer innovations. Having your AHSN involved in helping you shape your application is therefore a sensible approach. I would also suggest involving an NHS clinical partner early in the process, and your AHSN can help you source that partner. The schemes mentioned in this slide put LGC's role into context. If you are familiar with the National Institute for Health Research, NIHR's Eye for Eye programme, then this combined dual focus on commerciality and improvement in patient care will be familiar. All these schemes, like SBRI Healthcare, provide 100% funding, no match fund formally required. The major difference to SBRI Healthcare is that all these schemes are grants. SBRI Healthcare is a commercial contract, a small business research initiative, which acts very much like a grant. When a competition is run, you'll get an opportunity to see a copy of this contract in advance of the application, which they will not change. If you don't like the contract, then don't apply. This slide, taking out drop boxes and information about your organisation, shows the headings under which you will be expected to provide text about your project. The actual number of words needed does change depending on the competition, but there will be word limits. You will again see from these headings the commercial focus. You will also see the focus on patient and public involvement and engagement. This needs to be a strong part of your project planning to ensure that PPIE is integral to your project design. This will mean planning this early and having a plan to continuously involve and engage throughout the project lifecycle, including, I suggest, in helping you to shape your application to the SBRI healthcare competition. This diagram, taken from the recently published SBRI Healthcare Annual Review, clearly shows the application process. It has two phases. The first, up to £100,000 for a 6-month project, and the second, up to £1 million for a 12-month project. The second phase is by invitation only, and only phase 1 winners will be able to apply. These slides will be made available, and this will give you more time to look at the SBRI healthcare process in more detail. Now, this is the final slide I want to end on, which I feel is one of the most important elements of winning this and any other funding competition. Remember, you are being judged, scored, or assessed by human beings. And like Craig from Strictly, they can have doubts about scoring you well. The application assessors and your panel will have seen many, many projects. Your project, therefore, needs to stand out. It needs to be clear, concise, and meeting the needs of your funder completely. By the time you get to your panel interview, you will need to be able to tell the story of your innovation in a way that is completely convincing. So practice, 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 and field a strong team to the interview, including a clinician that you are partnering with, someone from the front line who can say, yes, this does meet the need. And that is all from me. Thank you for listening. I look forward to taking questions later. Thank you.
My name is James Otter, and this short presentation is around venture capital and the joys of fundraising. Next slide, please. So just a brief word about myself. I've spent about 15 years in commercial management when the UK had a chemical industry with Zeneca Agrochemicals, which is now Syngenta. And then since then, I've worked 20 years as a CEO and as an interim and turnaround manager in a range of bioscience and technology small companies. Also, in parallel to that, I've been a director and chairman of 3 venture capital trusts. And over the last 3 years, I've been the Royal Society Entrepreneur in Residence at the University of Southampton, sponsored by the Institute of Life Sciences. For those of you like academic backgrounds, I did a long time ago, I did a natural science degree in Cambridge, and I got an MBA from INSEAD in France. Next slide, please. So why do startups need finance? This is a pretty obvious question, but you do need to pay bills. And the whole theme of it, certainly if it's a technology company, is to convert academic science into a commercial offer. Also, at some stage, you need to get some focus into the organization and hire professional staff who really know what they're doing and can really provide focus to the project. And that in turn will accelerate product development and regulatory approval. You may even get to starting sales. And also nowadays, as we'll discuss in a few minutes, you may need to secure match funding to trigger Innovate grants, and there are a range of other reasons as well. Next slide, please. So for UK startups, and this is very difficult to talk to because I could talk for hours on this, but I'll try and condense it. Stay with me, as the Americans would say. The first option is probably grants. They come in all shapes and sizes. Crucially, a lot of them are non-dilutive, so the actual control of the company is not effective, but they are fiercely competitive after Brexit and the UK's exit from a lot of the European funding routes. Friends and family, people are very generous if you're starting out a new company, which is fantastic, but I'm always a bit reluctant to take money from friends and family because you have to work out in your own mind whether they can afford to lose their money, because this is high risk. They may lose everything. Angel investors come in also come in all shapes and sizes. They can be professional investors. They can be people who've made money from the industry sector that you're working in. There's a slight caveat: if they can get inclined to get involved, code for a complete whatever later on, and they can be resistant to later rounds of investment because their expectations aren't being met. So again, take care, but they are very useful. More likely, you're going to be bumping up against specialist early stage technology venture capital groups. Just to reel off some names: RT Group, Mercia, OSI in Oxford, Midven, Parkwalk Advisors, etc. They may have geographical constraints, and they may be linked to specific institutions. For example, Midven only do government science. And also there's another chunk of money around in family offices who are very discreet, but basically they're private offices to manage rich individuals' money, which can be good, can be bad, but those are the options open to you. Next slide, please. So again, this is a slightly negative side. An awful lot of people get all enthusiastic and they send hundreds of emails out to hundreds of people. I think that's inefficient. You have to be much better to do your research. And within the UK, there are an awful lot of generalist VC venture capital funds and VCT venture capital trusts, but most of them prefer to provide growth capital, not support, to startups, as they see startups as too high a risk. And historically, they would like to see revenues, plans, historical accounts, sales traction. So they like to see revenues and you're actually making progress in the market. And this is driven largely because an awful lot of the decision makers are finance specialists. So they will judge an investee not on their technology or innovation or quality of the team or the opportunity, but more on financial metrics, which as a startup is not a great place to be, because you're normally burning money, you've got nothing to show for it, and you're working hard, but they don't know that. And also some of these guys are driven by tax rules. So I've been in situations where suddenly a VC suddenly says, right, our fund's ended, it's done its 5 years, we have to sell our shares now. And that can cause real perturbations. So I've boldly put here, don't waste your time. It's very unlikely you're going to find someone wanting to invest in an early stage company. Later on for sure, but early stage probably not. Next slide, please, Alex. So how does the financing game work for startups? Again, this is probably best discussed over a few beers and a curry. But the way it normally works, and this is a bit of a shopping list, but this is a long process. Let's start at the bottom of the slide. This process will take you at least 6 months and absorb about 50% of the resource of a small company. So when I'm in charge of a small company, somebody says, let's start fundraising and let's do the launch of this product. Let's go to the States. You can only have one of those. And if you're fundraising, as a rule of thumb, the whole of the organization, or 50% of it, will be dedicated to fundraising. People rewriting accounts, not rewriting accounts, delete that, redoing spreadsheets, doing some research, making presentation, chasing people around in the States, or going to exhibitions, going to networking events. The time just flies by. So really watch it. It has to be done, but watch out. You need to hire a good lawyer and somebody you can trust. You need to write a business plan. Though increasingly people are quite happy with PowerPoints. You need to get out there and really hustle, build up a network, see people, contact people. You'll get endless refusals. But again, you get a refusal, say, well, who should I be talking to? Use that refusal to go on to something else. You probably need to find a lead investor, because if somebody actually says, you know, I know this area, I've made a lot of money in the time, I really like the guys, but I can't do the whole round myself, that is gold dust, because then other people who like you but don't know the sector may say, well, actually, if, I don't know, Georgina's investing, then I'm happy, I'll come follow up behind her. Then you complete the round, and then there's a whole lot of paperwork around issuing and allotting shares, adjusting the cap table, issuing share certificates, doing all the tax approval stuff. And then number 10, you have to go back to work and deliver everything. Next slide, please, Alex. So the basics are all around pitching. So again, it sounds like I'm a bit of a rant here, but it's a bit of a hobby horse. You have to talk to investors about making money. This is not an academic presentation. This is not an explanation about what wonderful research you've done and the problems you've had. The investors, 99% of the time, aren't interested. They want to know how you're going to make money. They will come back to that technology detail later on, but it's all around making money for the investors. And also you need to be credible. So you need to demonstrate your team understands the task ahead and can deliver it. So they're going to ask you a lot of questions around routes to market, around how you're going to achieve scale, how they're going to get their money back, who are you going to sell to, etc. So you need to get ahead of the pack. And it is stunning how many projects are out there in the UK at the moment looking for investment. So I do a lot of work with Octopus. They see one particular unit will see about 2,000 business plans a year, and they invest in 5 or 10. So going through the front door is probably not going to work. You have to either be stunningly good to go through that way, or more likely find a way to network your way through a side door. So investing is an emotional process, so you need to sell a good story. And normally what happens is the investor has made the decision very, very early on, and then due diligence and all the paperwork and everything is really just confirming his or her. So next slide, please. So key messages: get used to turn down. And again, it's a very crude analogy, but think teenage dating. You will get lots and lots of refusals, and you'll get lots and lots of excuses, most of which you should just ignore. And actually just ignore the excuse and say, well, that's fine. We're not for you, but who should I be talking to? So you need to get thick-skinned and tenacious. This is not a personal process. This is business. Crucially, pick the right sort of investor. Don't just go for any money, because you need to think through the next move. Because if you take in money from somebody who you don't like, who you can't trust, could be that they're going to cause you problems later on. So my basic question on this is, would you go on a camping trip with these guys? Which will have a lot of people. Their aspirations the same as yours. You say, well, don't worry, we'll just talk them round later on. Easier said than done. To keep things simple, take the money whenever possible. So even if you go over your limit, the basic rule etched in time is and learn from examples, is take the money. Even if you're going over what you think you need, take it. And don't underestimate how painful this process can be. And crucially, if you are doing a second round, talk to your existing shareholders. Get in the discipline of making quarterly updates, good or bad, rain or shine, and call them when you don't need the money. So you'll keep in touch with them. So they don't think, oh my God, here he is again. He wants money. Why else would he call me? And somehow try and enjoy the ride. Next slide, please, Alex. So if you get to an investment, you're going to come up against a thing called a term sheet. Now this is, again, you can talk for hours on this, but this will have a headline of terms of a possible deal. So pre-money valuation, what the value of the company is right now, how much they're putting in, timing and tranches, anything to do with share classes, representation of the board, and then crucially, all sorts of things around the investor's right to block decisions. Again, this is all this fair and love war and negotiations, and term sheets are a fine example. It could be that the person coming in wants to change the articles, the rules of the company. And then also you need a period of exclusivity. And this is where you need professional advisors who've really been through the process, who are perhaps one step back, who don't get too emotionally involved. Next slide, please, Alex. So again, some nice pictures of crazy people doing free climbing. This is a game of snakes and ladders, and it can crash and burn at any time. So you need to be resilient. And this is where you need a good board, a good chair, a good advisor, and that way you can work as a team. And because otherwise people get emotional and make a side comment and the whole thing goes pear-shaped. Next one, please, Alex. So conclusions. This is a long, painful, distracting, time-consuming process. Unless you're a hot air, if you mention AI, cryptocurrency, IT security right now, you will get money probably in the base of a coffee, or who knows. It's going to take a lot of resources, so make sure that your team doesn't burn out. So don't get yourself in a fix where you're trying to make incredible promises on technology or commercial delivery at the same time as funding. Investors need a good story, and it's well worth being a bit picky, trying to find the right sort of money, the right sort of investors, because they're going to have to stand by you in the next round. So get the right money. But also for those of you who are like the US, as a rule of thumb, things happen in the States. The different rules are a bit different, but valuations are often 10 times that in the UK. And as I said before, the CEOs, this is a time where you need a good board. To have a CEO to expect it to do everything themselves is naive, to put it mildly. You need to work as a team with your senior team and your chair, your NEDs, etc. And if you can, enjoy the ride. Next slide. I think that may be it. Next slide. Oh yes, and oh, can I go? Do not watch Dragon's Den. Reality is very different, because the real world is very different. But enjoy the ride and good luck. That's all.
Okay, so welcome. My name is Chris Buckingham, Dr. Chris Buckingham, and I'm going to be briefly introducing you to crowdfunding for your great medtech ideas. Sorry about the background noise. Unfortunately, we can't get rid of that. There's some builders in today. So my background, I've got 12 years experience as a consultant, crowdfunding consultant, and we deal with everything from arts right the way through to zoos and everything in between. I'm presently a senior teaching fellow at University of Southampton at Winchester School of Art, and we're about to launch Rebel Niche, our online sort of repository really for tools and resources to enable you to better sort of conceptualize problems and issues before you go live with your campaign. So, hi. So we're going to start with crowdsourcing. I think crowdsourcing is quite an important place to begin, actually, because especially for medtech, crowdsourcing can't be discounted or written off just yet. Crowdsourcing, really, the sort of justification for it is to share ideas, co-creation, and engage prosumers and citizens alike. Citizens, because of course governments can use, or quangos can use crowdsourcing as much as private enterprise. The business case for using crowdsourcing, of course, is to accelerate innovation, increase efficiencies, and of course reduce your costs. The bottom line. So, but for us, it's the square up on the right hand side here, the red square. That's really the important parts. The business models, disrupting work models, and reinventing financial models. This is where crowdfunding really starts to emerge from crowdsourcing in the present form that we have today, i.e. online. And it's also where we start to see crowdfunding sort of separate really from crowdsourcing, because of course we're focusing very much on the funding aspect of what it is we're trying to develop, the vision we're trying to bring to the market. Now, when we talk about, if we talk about crowdfunding in the entrepreneurial press, we're often clumped together under this umbrella term alternative finance. Now, alternative finance involves factoring, crowdfunding, pension-led funding, and community shares, among others. But I would argue, actually, crowdfunding and factoring is becoming more and more mainstream, and so it's less and less about being alternative forms of finance. But of course, you know, pension-led funding, community shares, factoring, all this is great stuff. And if you want more information on how these models work, shoot over to YouTube. There's far better presentations on these subjects than I can give you here in the time limit that I've got. For us, right here, right now, we're going to concentrate on focusing on crowdfunding. Now, crowdfunding. We have 5 distinct sort of flavors of crowdfunding, if you like, which gives us the acronym DREAM. Donation, reward, equity, interest, and mixed. So donation, let's start with the D, donation. Donation is really about philanthropy. The motivation for the crowd here are the warm glow of doing good or providing for a cause in some form. Reward, I think, tends still by default to be the model we think of when we think of crowdfunding. We think of reward. Basically, it's shopping, it's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, some of the bigger platforms that we have here globally with a global presence. Equity, Seedrs, Crowdcube, etc. This is the high risk sort of model, and very highly regulated because it is such high risk. We then move to interest, which is raising debt from the crowd and then paying that debt back with a little bit of interest, just as you would any financial institution that you're raising debt from. And then finally, we have mixed. And mixed tends to be reward with equity, reward with interest. It's 2 campaigns. You start with reward, where you test the water, generally speaking. You start with reward, where you test the water just to see how people react to your product or your vision. And then you move to equity and interest when you want to sort of scale things up a little bit, maybe a few years down the road. Now, it's the less mixed is the less of the 5 forms, the less frequent, but it's becoming more common for platforms themselves to offer you a mixed package. For example, they might offer you bonds as well as equity, or equity as well as debt, just to give an example of how things are evolving slightly within the crowdfunding genre. So that's our dream. That's our 5 flavors of crowdfunding. But for the campaigns, especially the reward model, if you look at the number of campaigns that succeed, and by success here I'm measuring getting their funding, getting the requirements, getting the money that they've asked for, there's only about 30% of campaigns that are going to succeed. And when they do succeed, they're going to succeed by about 110%. So that's quite low numbers. 70% of campaigns are only going to get about 30% of the money that they've asked for. So that's a really high fail rate in the reward model. But I would argue as well that this is applicable across the board. If you're looking at equity, you know, it's just similar sort of situation where a lot of campaigns are going to fail to reach their targets, fail to get the money. And in with the debt, it's just as frequent. We also see a lot more campaigns failing than we do succeeding at the moment. And there's several reasons for this. In part, it's about their communication and about the trust that the crowd feel toward the team and toward the people behind, the management behind the campaign. Now, in terms of communication, you've got to be clear in terms of what it is you're offering the crowd. You know, you've got to be concise and coherent in terms of the vision that you're creating, the strategy that you're presenting to the crowd. And that leads to trust, because you've got to be authentic. You've got to be seen to be trustworthy, and the crowd have to buy into what it is that you're developing and what you're offering. And that leads to the top right-hand corner here, crowd consent. And crowd consent is my term for any of the models, really, because what you're doing, you're asking permission from the crowd to create that vision or to succeed in some form through your crowdfunding campaign. And that's what I call crowd consent. Permission from the crowd to create that vision, to do that thing, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Now, on the next slide, you can see here access and inclusion. Those are the 2 big motivators for the crowd. They want access to the product or to the team, but they also want to be included in the journey. They want to be included in this journey, this entrepreneurial journey that you're on. And underneath that, you can see all sorts of other areas of motivation that might be important for you, but you need to look at your crowd, you need to look at your tribe and decide what is, you know, the motivating factor here. And when we talk about consumer tribes, really what we're talking about are the activators at the bottom here. Tribes are really important because they are the ones that will support you, and in turn you support them through what you're doing. It's very difficult to sell to tribes, but it's quite easy to support them in some form, and through that support you get them to spread the love or to talk about, or disseminate your campaign through social media, etc. So you want to activate them, you want them to engage and be included with you on this journey that you're on. Of course, then there are dangers with consumer tribes in that they can become double agents or plunderers, or indeed they can become entrepreneurs in their own right. Now, we haven't got time to go through this in full. If you want more, go to Kovac et al. 2007. It's a brilliant book called Consumer Tribes. But the point to this is that it's about the relationship. And that relationship changes over time. So where you've got investors that are consumers, that are producers, that are investors, that are consumers, this relationship changes now, especially post-campaign, after your campaign, when your product is out there or you're working with the NHS or whoever it may be that you're partnering with. You know, these relationships will change over time, and it's worth considering that impact on your business model and what it is you're trying to achieve over that time period. Because again, this ties in with the tribes, you know, and it builds these stronger relationships between you and your tribe. Now, there is a dark side to crowdfunding, to any of the models that we're using, but particularly I think with the reward and the equity models. And this begins with the business model and the intellectual property that you've got, in that there may be sensitivities there that you don't want to give away, that you don't want to talk about in your crowdfunding campaign, but you've got to be seen to be transparent, and you've got to answer the questions that the crowd are asking you. You know, so how do you do that, but withhold some of the information that you consider a little bit too sensitive or that you simply don't want to give away? So there are issues here. Criticism and failure are both going to be in the public domain, so you need to be pretty thick-skinned. You're going to have to handle this. And time and quality is probably the 2 biggest issues, not delivering in the time frames that you've offered and not delivering to the quality that you've promised within the campaign. So these things all need considering before you go. That's it, guys. So we're about a minute under. Pretty good going now. You'll see on the next couple of slides, we've got the references next, and then we've got the there, and then we have a slide where you have a telephone number there. If you want to give me a text message, you're more than welcome to on that number. Otherwise, you've got the urang@rebelniche.com email address, and there's also my email address at the very beginning. So that's it, folks. I hope that was okay, and I look forward to your questions in the Q&A session. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks to all our speakers for those wonderful insights about the fundraising journey. And we're now going to welcome you to join us in our live Q&A session taking place in the sessions area, which I'll be joining onto the panel. To avoid confusion, just note that the Q&A session will take place in its own session on the left-hand side of your screen under sessions. And please note that this is called Identifying the Right Funding. You'll see another one. But don't worry about that one, just go to the identifying the right funding. Each session is being recorded and it will be available after the course, about a week or two after the end of the course, so around mid-July, so that you can go back over those presentations. And following the session, you'll also have the opportunity to connect with some of the partner companies that are MedTech SMEs and support organisations like NIHR and the University of Southampton Institute for Life Sciences in the Digital Expo area. So you'll see the Expo icon on the left-hand side of your screen. And there you'll be able to view their material, play some of their videos, or get onto video with them and have some live chat with them, both on text and on video. And if you want to connect with those exhibition booths and those exhibitors, please select the Super Connect Me button. And after the event, we will facilitate those introductions. So we're now going to head over to the sessions area, and I will see you there very shortly with all of our speakers. So yeah, please select sessions on the left-hand side of your screen.